Okay, this is going to be an open mic session where anyone and everyone can say whatever they feel like saying about their experiences with Sue. We're going to begin with the family members, and then after that, I wanted to give Glenn Dybert and Rob Cunningham, the responsible parties for the piano solo you just heard, to get their chance, and then the rest of you just come up whatever order you want. If there's anybody who needs to speak and then leave quickly, you know, let your priority be known.
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm Sue's son. I want to thank everybody for coming out today. I'm sure she'd actually be very happy to see each and every one of you. If not, maybe a little embarrassed, you know, like, you shouldn't have come, I'm fine, you know. If you knew Mom, it's funny. But, you know, my parents split when I was 7, which is a long time ago, in case you can't tell. But she was, you know, she was raising 3 boys on her own, single mom, you know, in North Jersey towards New York. Not the cheapest area in the world, and, you know, it was tough. And you could see sometimes she would fray around the ends, but one thing about Mom, you know, she might bend, but she would never break. She was ultimately one of the strongest people I knew. And, you know, it's, pardon, almost towards the end, it was actually me and my wife had like a little, like almost a running thing, like, you know, oh, it's just cancer, she'll be fine, you know. She just kept beating things, you know. She was so tough. You know, growing up with us and somehow managing to keep us fed and sheltered, and all 3 of us actually turned out okay, which is honestly surprising to me. But here we are, you know, and we've all got our kids here. You know, all 3 of us had kids. She had grandkids. Matter of fact, she just had her newest granddaughter up here, and unfortunately, she didn't get to meet her, but I'm sure she would have loved to. You know, the cool thing with Mom is she did what she needed to do to get us up and running. And we all, you know, graduated high school, we got jobs, went to college, what have you. And then, you know, she decided it was time for her to make a move. And, you know, she came out to Arizona, started her life new, and that was great. And she did a lot of things that made her happy, and we're all very happy for her, you know. Like Jim was saying, she got to see a lot of the places she always wanted to see, and she rediscovered music, because she had kind of, with raising us, you know, she was a music student, and graduated from Manhattan School of Music for piano, and she kind of put that all on hold when she was raising us, because she didn't feel like piano was a reliable means of raising 3 children. So she got into medical research, and then ultimately when she came back out here, rediscovered her music, which was great, and I could tell it was giving her a lot of joy. And you know, obviously it's important in that stage. And, you know, the thing about Mom is she was so selfless that she would always put the needs of others before her own needs. So it was kind of nice to see her do some things that made her happy towards the end. You know, and I was happy that myself and a lot of the members of our small family were able to go out and see her before she passed, and say her goodbyes and tell her we love her. Dramatic pause. And, you know, it was just very gratifying for us. And once again, I want to thank everybody for coming out. And that's, I'm sure she'd be very honored. Thanks.
Hi there. I'm Lauren, Sue's middle son. There's 3 of us, as Eric mentioned, and actually I'm realizing a lot of common threads between probably what we're all 3 going to say, so get ready for some deja vu. Dramatic pause. I normally consider myself a fairly, you know, okay writer and speaker, but finding the words to share here today has been extraordinarily difficult. With a lifetime shared with my amazing mother, it's amazing how all you really want to say at the end is, I love and miss you, Mom. Parent-child relationships, from what I've seen, They have a series of ebbs and flows, moments of love, closeness, occasional conflict, distance, reconnection, particularly in the teens. But that was never the case with my mom and I. The way we interacted when I was a kid was virtually identical to the way we interacted just before she passed. I can still hear her voice. Hi, Laura. That's the way she always greeted me, always comforting, always supportive, always accepting of anything that I may have been going through in my life at any given moment. As Eric mentioned, when we were kids, there was a period where she was a single mom with 3 young boys. My mom was as bright and sunny to us during that period as she ever was. It's safe to bet that my perception of that period was very different from hers. As a parent myself now, I know full well that could not have been easy. But you'd never know it. Her positivity through adversity is a true source of inspiration. There was a consistency of love that never wavered. Her absences left an unfillable hole that I wouldn't even attempt to fill. That was my mom, though. Consistent, always looking forward, never looking back. Her eyes were always on the horizons, discovering something she wanted to explore, something she wanted to learn and be fascinated by. Her enthusiasm never wavered. The concept of becoming jaded is about the last thing you could say about her. As we've seen tonight, it's exemplified through her lifelong passion for music, a passion that inspired me personally to pursue a career in music myself. My mom was a phenomenal pianist, and I think we've seen some of that tonight. It meant the world to her. Years of mastering her craft, and she still wanted to learn more. Whether it was playing professionally or just practicing on her own, she always had something new to work on, to bring her playing to the next level. Not for any outer recognition, just her own satisfaction and sense of accomplishment. Again, always looking forward, never looking back. She was surely looking forward when she moved here to Arizona, where she spent many of the happiest years of her life. Coming from places like Brooklyn, Manhattan, and New Jersey, she found a paradise here and brought with her a partner she could happily share her days with. I'd never seen her more content. For that, I'm truly grateful. As my mom faced her mortality, she was still looking forward. The courage she demonstrated in the face of the abyss was nothing short of miraculous and truly inspiring. As her medical situation became more grave, it was her consoling us and never the other way around. She just wanted to know when she could sit at the piano again, and when she could see the dogs again, planning the next getaway with Jim for a new adventure. Always looking forward, never looking back. When I think about my mom, I'm inspired to approach life the way she did. Always looking for the best ways to spend her days. Always looking to share that sense of wonder with everyone around her. I hope I can be as strong as she was, I truly do. And pass that joy along to my children as she did me. Always looking forward, never looking back, only doing so to say, I love and miss you, Mom. Thank you.
I'm Elliot, Sue's youngest son. I'm the little one. That was like her big joke, you know. I'm the little one. Just so you guys know, I'm a genetic mutation. Seriously, I am legitimately the tallest person I know in any extended part of our family anywhere. So I like to say I'm a genetic mutation. So I am. Yeah. How to summarize your relationship with your mother in a few minutes? That's like a real, yeah, that's a tough one. And, you know, after Mom passed, it was weird. I just went into this very blank place, you know, and like you couldn't really process. I just became very scattered, and it was, you know, you almost become numb. You're trying to figure out what's going on. And then as I started, you know, having this here today has kind of really made me have to stop and think about, you know, what is it that I was feeling, and what is it that, you know, why was I having trouble, such a hard time kind of connecting to maybe what was so special about my mom. And, you know, it's interesting because, you know, for most of you here, you knew my mom in the last years of her life. And as Lauren and Eric have kind of touched on, like, you know, I've known a lot of different moms. Like you do if you know somebody for a long time, you know all the incarnations of them. And so, you know, I knew Mom, who was the single mom raising 3 delinquent and crazy boys. And when I say delinquent, I'm not lying. Eric, but, you know, and I mean, and, you know, and then knowing Mom as, you know, she, you know, grew into, then, you know, obviously you see it through your own personal lens, and learning kind of what to do with me, who was this tall, lanky, scatterbrained, klutzy kid who, unlike seemingly everyone in our family, was more into like sports than music and art. Although I loved art, but I was like the weird jock and trying to figure out, and like taking me to baseball games and basketball, and trying to like figure out like how do I do all this? Like, you know, and you know, the harsh realities of me getting to high school and her being like, well, maybe you can get a scholarship to college. And I'm like, it's kind of like you had to break the hard news of like, Mom, there's a difference between playing the sports and actually being good at them, you know? So, you know, but, you know, and just seeing Mom, you know, go through so many different incarnations and ups and downs, and then, you know, finally, you know, kind of towards the end, realizing, like, you know, I remember when Jim talked about them moving out here, kind of thinking about, you know, I remember when they came back from the honeymoon, and she was like, yeah, we'll do it when we're retired, and then realizing, like why wait? You know, why wait for that? And they had the opportunity, and they came, and these were some of the best years of her life, and for that, I'm eternally grateful, you know, to everyone in this room, to Jim, to Arizona. What do you call it? Thank you, Arizona. What do you call it? You can put me on some sort of promotional brochure. But, you know, and getting to see her finally be happy, because, you know, my mother in the early years, again, it was a real struggle, you know, dealing with us all the time, dealing with conflict, and that's kind of where kind of came to, as I'm sitting here trying to figure out, you know, what is it that was so, what could I not find that I was trying to connect to and figure out with, you know, why was my mother so special to me? Because, you know, everyone, you know, has the connection to your parents. I mean, I have the relatives, they're not in this room, who you are obligated to because they are family, but it is not like that special relationship, you know? And what is it? And it's, you know, as I look back, I realize, when you look back, you realize there was no real, you know, as we grow into our adult selves, you realize life is a lot about conflict and stress, and just constantly managing stress in your life and conflict with your family, with your workers, with your friends, with everything. It's this never-ending saga of back and forth, and you're thankful for the times when things are relatively calm, when you have that calm. And when I look back on Mom, like, you know, I can't think of a thing she did growing up that would ever put me in a room with a psychologist. You know, I can't think, you know, I mean, listen, I'm a parent, we all are like, yeah, you're going to be complaining to me to a shrink in 20 years. Like, it's like, this is what happens. And I can't think of a single time when she did anything that was anything other than just loving and supportive. And there's no like one special moment. There's no one special thing. It was everything. I mean, she taught me, she was so loving and just was always cheery. And, Mom was totally, it was amazing because she was like one of the least confrontational people on the planet. Like, she really did not like conflict. But she was also simultaneously, despite that lack of kind of like she was not the type of person who's going to go get you, but she was so tough. Like, everything just rolled off of her. And like to be around somebody who, there was never conflict, there was never stress, there was never anything. It was just joy and love, and that was it, my whole life. And so it was just, you just are so thankful for that, and you aspire to be that and to pass that on to everyone around me and to my children and to my family. And I'll miss her like crazy, and I don't know what to say other than she was amazing, and I love her, and I love you, Mom, and it was just absolutely such a joy and a privilege to be her son. I think at that point I should stop babbling. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Daniela. I'm her second oldest granddaughter. And obviously I have a different relationship to her because I wasn't raised by her exactly. But our relationship basically consisted of, the occasional phone calls, Mother's Day, her birthday, my dad's birthday, someone's birthday, I don't know. And it was only till a couple years ago that I really started connecting with her more than just a couple holidays a year. I'd just randomly call her up. We just started talking about anything, politics, school, her music, family, obviously her dogs. And we just talk about anything. I can't even remember half the things I babbled to her about, but she was just always there to listen, and having that with her was really nice, especially in her final years. I remember one time I was on my way to my friend's house, and I thought, I'll just call Grandma quick on the way there. I ended up sitting in my friend's driveway for about 30 minutes just babbling to her about whatever it was that day that I needed to talk about. My friends were sitting outside the car like, come on, guys, come on. But no, it was, no matter what, I could just talk to her about anything, which was great, especially just, I had a relationship problem last year, long distance, we were struggling. I decided to call my grandma, who better to talk about this, I don't know. And she was there to listen. I just needed somebody to listen, really. And she was there, and she helped me, and, I hung up feeling really good. And then the next day I woke up to a voicemail from her. I'm like, dude, I just talked to her, what the heck? And it was just her telling me that, she felt that she wasn't being supportive enough of me, or that she wasn't there enough for me, but she just wanted me to know that she was there. And I knew that from the phone call, but just that kind of really speaks to her character and how she was, how she always wanted you to know that she loved you and, she was there for you. And those phone calls, that was basically the basis of my relationship with her, being in Pennsylvania, her being all the way over here in Arizona, and I do cherish that a lot, and I'm really going to miss her, and I'm so proud to be able to call her my grandmother. Thank you.
I'm James Kessler. Everyone knew me as Jamie growing up. And my father, Alan, was her older brother. He was 5 years older than her. And he couldn't fly out here to be here, so he shared some of his thoughts that I'm going to try to to represent, and then I have some of my own as well. So starting from my dad, he recalls that she was around 11, maybe a little bit younger, and she came home from school one day with this folded up piece of cardboard and some pieces of paper. And what it was essentially just an outline of a piano keyboard. And she would practice on it every day, and then she would fold it back up and bring it back to school again. And he didn't know who she was talking to at school. Maybe it was the school music teacher. And he says, I don't know what my parents must have thought of that. At the time, they were living in public housing. Their father didn't make a lot of money. He was working as a cutter in the clothing industry. So they must have talked it over, and they went out and they got a used piano. So they got this piano, and nobody knows how they found this music school, but it was called Martha Levitsky's Music School. And Sue managed to get a scholarship there, and she took lessons there from that time until she went to college. Sometimes they would go down together to the music school, my dad and her, and she would go into these local music competitions. Before that time, they had listened to a lot of music on LP. He said LPs just came out around then. And he had an old violin. There was an old violin in the family. It wasn't very good. Their mother had painted it white and hung it up on the wall, which is a very Jewish thing to do around the time. I didn't even know this about my dad until he told me about this last week. He played the violin, and he was taking violin lessons at the Martha Levitsky Music School. And they would go down to, they would take a bus to the Grand Army Plaza at the Brooklyn Public Library, and they would sort through the chamber music and find pieces that they wanted to play together. And my dad says, I hated the violin, and I couldn't play it very well, but I played it. And that's how we got started, he says. So they would play chamber music together at home. And when she got older, she wanted to stay local. My dad, 5 years older than her, he was already away at college, so he doesn't remember exactly what happened next. But she went up to, to college, I guess Brooklyn College, and then eventually to Manhattan School of Music. She wanted to stay nearby. Zenon wasn't her teacher right away, but he was her teacher in graduate school. And my dad just said that he remembered when she was living in Teaneck in New Jersey, and he didn't know how she found the time for music. Like Lauren, you were saying, maybe she practiced a little bit while you guys were at school. I don't know. I'm not sure when she practiced, but that brings me to me and my story. So I'm also in the music industry too. I'm a music teacher, and I don't remember that much about how I got started with music, but I have this cassette tape that my parents made of me singing songs with my mom when I was about 2 years old. And I'm singing these songs with her, folk songs and children's songs, and some of it I'm singing solfege syllables, do, re, mi, at 2 years old. And they're the right syllables. I don't even know how I knew any of those syllables at age 2, and I don't know how my mom knew them. I'm guessing that had something to do with Sue, because there's nobody else that would have brought that knowledge into our family. When I was around 3, we got a piano at home. Sue helped my parents pick it out. It was a 1913 Walters, New York, tall upright, a big, heavy beast of a piano with long strings and a good bass sound. It weighs about 1,000 pounds. And at age 4.5, I started piano lessons. Growing up, I remember talking to Sue a lot about music when we would visit Teaneck or when she'd visit my family in Weston, Connecticut. We'd talk about classical repertoire. Sometimes I'd play for her, and she would comment. She wouldn't have that much to say, but sometimes as a young kid, age 11 or something, I would make these comments about how easy music was. I wasn't playing hard repertoire yet. And she would just remind me of how much more there was for me to learn, and how difficult it was. And then sometimes she'd play something. When she played Bach, it just blew my mind. It was extraordinary. And I remember in middle school, again, having a conversation with her about how I thought piano was so easy, and she reminded me about counterpoint and multiple voices, and used Bach as an example. We'd talk about piano playing techniques and hand shape, arm movements, balance, fingering, dynamics, tone. And it took me many, many years to understand any of the significance of what she was saying. None of it sunk in at that age. A lot of what she was talking about was lost on me until I became a piano teacher myself. And some of the things that she talked about were a mystery. Like, I remember her mentioning something about piano vibrato. And for those of you who aren't musicians, I mean, the piano can't really do vibrato. But apparently there was a way that she knew of. And as a teenager, I remember getting this mysterious birthday present. I must have been about 14, no, younger, maybe 12 or 13. My parents didn't say where it came from, but it was pretty clear that it must have come from Sue. It was a huge stack of CDs. All this beautiful classical repertoire, orchestral, solo piano, Bach, Chopin, Debussy, her favorites, Vladimir Horowitz, Alexis Weissenberg, Itzhak Perlman and Isaac Stern playing the Bach double violin concerto. And I treasured those CDs. I listened to them so much. That was a big part of the basis of my listening vocabulary all through, when I was a teenager. Last summer, about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, I had the chance to speak with Sue on the phone one last time. That would be the last time I ever spoke with her. And we had a really long phone conversation, a couple of hours in my memory. And we talked about pianos and models of pianos and, again, repertoire and fingering and technique and music in general. And I even asked her about that piano vibrato. Like, what were you talking about? And she just laughed and said it was nothing. No good pianist would ever use piano vibrato. It's all about economy of motion, she said. No wasted energy. A pianist needs to conserve their energy. I told her how another really interesting connection for me was that my son, who is 8.5 years old now, he started piano lessons about a little over a year ago. And of course, me being a piano teacher, I had to find the very best teacher for him. So I went searching around and I found someone who graduated from Manhattan School of Music. And his name's Benjamin Steinhardt. So I was at Eli, my son's Eli. I was at Eli's very first piano lesson, and I said to Ben, Eli's grand aunt, I guess, studied at Manhattan School of Music, and Zenon Fishbein was her husband, and also her teacher at one time. And he said, "Oh, Zenon Fishbein, I know who that is, yeah." This was Ben talking, when I was doing my master's jury for my master's degree, Zenon Fishbein was on the jury panel. And I was like, wow, what a small world. And he said, yeah, Zenon, saved me in that jury because I was playing a Beethoven sonata and I wasn't so good at that fast movement. And Zenon was the senior on the panel. And it came time to do the Beethoven sonata, and they said, well, what should you play? Which movement should you play? And they turned to Zenon, and Zenon said, let's hear the slow movement. And so they all just deferred to Zenon, and, well, I guess, so they heard the slow movement, and that's how Ben got his master's degree. So, Sue's influence on my father, and thus on my childhood, had a big impact on me. And as a music teacher, I know that the way a child is acculturated into music sets the stage for their entire musical life. And I know my dad was very proud of her, and I was raised in a musically rich house because of her influence on my dad. And because of her musically enriched life, her influence enlarged and filled our whole family with an appreciation that would have never been if not for her. No one will ever know where that spark came from as a young child. Maybe she was 9 years old. Who knows how that got started for her? But because of her and her folded up piece of cardboard, now I'm out in the world enriching the lives of children through music. And my passion and the depth of richness of artistic appreciation that I impart on my students all started with Sue and her little cardboard piano. So, thanks.
Hi, I'm Nancy Lawson, Jim's sister. When my brother Jim married Sue, he gave me a second sister. She was this amazing person, smart, musical, kind, tolerant, helpful. She changed my brother in many ways, all for the better. I could tell you many stories of things I have done with Sue, and they will always be in my memory. But I have decided instead to read you a short essay by Rabbi Joshua Loth Liebman entitled, "Death is Not the Enemy." I often feel that death is not the enemy of life, but its friend. For it is the knowledge that our years are limited which makes them so precious. It is the truth that time is but lent to us which makes us, at our best, look upon our years as a trust handed into our temporary keeping. We are like children privileged to spend a day in a great park, a park filled with many gardens and playgrounds, and azure-tinted lakes and boats sailing upon tranquil waves. True, the day allotted to each of us is not the same in length, in light, in beauty. Some children of earth are privileged to spend a long and sunlit day in the garden of the earth. For others, the day is shorter, cloudier, and dusk descends more quickly, as in a winter's tale. But whether our life is a long summery day or a shorter wintry afternoon, we know that inevitably there are storms and squalls which overcast even the bluest heaven, and there are sunlit rays which pierce the darkest autumn sky. The day we are privileged to spend in the grand park of life is not the same for all human beings, but there is enough beauty and joy and gaiety in the hours if we but treasure them. Then, for each of us, the moment comes when the great nurse, death, takes us by the hand and quietly says, "It is time to go home. Night is coming. It is your bedtime, child of earth. Come, you're tired. Lie down at last in the quiet nursery of nature and sleep. Sleep well. The day is gone. Stars shine in the canopy of eternity."
Hello, delighted to meet Sue's family and to hear from you. Charming. Almost nobody was as charming as your mom. I mean, everyone here knows that. Everyone that ever played music with her knows that. She was the least diva person you could ever meet. She was interested in the composer, the quality of the music, and her colleagues. Simply put. And you knew that when you, I'm an amateur clarinet player. Not that good, but boy, she never made me feel that way. I was one of the little too tall, nerdy, athletic, in clarinet. And I've also played in high school, and it was great. Actually, I was first chair, so I was pretty good. But anyway, I just want to begin by saying, to put it in perspective, this, thanks to that gentleman over there, is one of the most important things I have done in my life. Thank you, Rob. And he did all the work. I did nothing. But I thought, when I knew, after talking to Jim, that Sue's circumstances were pretty difficult, and I recalled that I had commissioned a piece prior to this, in fact, 5 other pieces. One of them was for a clarinet player like myself, who was a college roommate, who died very early, at about 62, after a career in medicine, but he continued to play clarinet at a serious level. And I mean serious. He was recruited out of high school to go to all these different music schools, but he wanted to be a doctor. Alas, too late. He never heard the piece I commissioned, so this time I thought, no. We're going to do this in time so that these people, Sue and Ruth, hopefully would hear the piece. And thanks to Rob Cunningham, we succeeded. So thank you very much, Rob. And beautiful today. I mean, it's a beautiful piece. Not sad, and we talked about it first. I said, this is not funereal, this is upbeat like your mother. And he accomplished it, amazing, in a very good time. It was such good luck and a pleasure to have met Sue and Jim Lawson through the chamber music organizations and the piano club here in Phoenix. It was just incredible good luck. And it was a highlight for me each time to read music, rehearse music, and perform music with Sue Lawson. And I'm finding out today why I had that sense, why that was always such a pleasure, because she was incredibly optimistic, upbeat, supportive, and diplomatic. When she would say, let's take it at letter C again, you knew you were in trouble. But she would explain, I think we have to pick up the tempo, and I think that high F is a little flat. I mean, she was wonderful. And I always played better when I was playing with Sue. I mean, she brought you along. And I was talking to Don Harvey earlier, and then everyone felt that way. She's the perfect accompanist and always focused on her colleagues, a selfless individual. And she brought humility, charm, optimism, and yes, humor rather often to the room. She came up to me one time at one of the chamber music organizations, and they were working, I didn't know this, they were working on the Poulenc Sextet, a piano and 5 woodwinds. Very tough piece. And she came up to me and she said, Glenn, I'm a pediatrician, I'm a doctor, so she says, Glenn, I've got my elbow is hurting so much, you know. And I looked this up, and she said, I looked this up, and it's called Poulenc elbow. And she said, do you have any idea about this? And I said, I'm such a nerd. I pulled up my phone, I'm looking this up, and I said, Poulenc elbow. And she touched me, she was laughing like crazy. She says, no. I'm just jerking you around, you know, this is fun. Anyway, so great. But in addition, she had limitless talent. I think you expressed it so well. She would try anything, do anything, and she could achieve almost everything. She was amazing. After she had heard and played the nocturne that Rob wrote, she sent out a note to our group and said, you know, quote, this is her selflessness. I am delighted with this new piece and overwhelmed with emotion knowing that my good friend Ruth Costa, to whom it was also dedicated, will never enjoy hearing it. This is in the midst of her illness. I mean, that's astounding. Classic, vintage, warm-hearted Sue. That's what that was. That was typical. But it's so atypical for most human beings to be that way. I have 3 sisters, and Sue is a musical sister, so I had 4. And that's how I look at her. She is a tremendous human being. Whenever hearing chamber music, I will always envision Sue at the piano. And when I play chamber music, and I have with, thank God, these people who play with me, all these pianists in this room, you know what I'm saying here. When I look up from the music and I'm playing, I always secretly wish I would see her at the piano again. That's how I feel. But again, Rob, priceless. You know, for everything else, there's MasterCard, but this is priceless. And I really, really appreciate the effort and the personal attention you paid to it. Thank you very much.
I first met Sue through the Paradise Valley Chamber Music Collective, or PVCMC as we call it here locally. She had heard some of my works played for that group, and I had the opportunity afterward to talk with Sue and with Jim. And so I got to experience firsthand her warm, kind personality. I was relatively new to the area, so I'd never heard her play, but I was told that she was also a fine pianist. She told me nothing about her medical problems. Obviously, she was the kind of person not to dwell on the negative, but to embrace the positive possibilities of life. Then in May 2017, Glenn commissioned the Nocturne. And he's very modest. He doesn't want to admit his role in this, but without Glenn, the piece would never have existed. Glenn also told me more about Sue's musical background at the time, and he also told me about the struggle that she was going through. It's the first inkling I had of it. Eventually, Sue played the Nocturne herself, and she recorded it for her YouTube channel. And I went into her channel and listened to a lot of the music there, and I discovered for myself what a really, not just a great chamber musician, but also a very fine piano soloist she was. I was very, very impressed by that. And then not long after that, she went into the hospital for the procedure, which we all hoped would save her life. By the following May, she seemed to be coming back physically. And in that month, she played for both the Sunday Classics West and Sunday Classics East Club. I was present at the Sunday Classics East concert, and that was the first time that I had heard her play live while she was in a state of relative physical strength. And I was just bowled over by her professionalism and her musical sensitivity and her technical precision. And on May the 24th, she played for the last time for the Phoenix Piano Club, offering a marvelous rendition of Chopin's First Impromptu. We were hosting that night in our home. I believe that was probably her last public performance. So I knew Sue for all too brief a period, but she was a great inspiration to me because she wasn't just a fine musician, but she knew how to love life and how to live passionately and enthusiastically. And I could only hope to emulate that fine example.
This time, just come up whenever y'all want to.
I'm obviously a pianist.
Not everybody wears their piano.
And like most pianists, I probably would be a little more comfortable right now sitting down and playing something rather than standing up here and talking. But I had the honor and the pleasure to host the May 2017 event where Sue played. And we'll all hold on to those memories for a long, long time. I'm going to be very brief because I could only find a pen back there and only had about 60 seconds to stop this time. 3 things about Sue. Wonderful musician, obviously. Fabulous pianist. I had the pleasure of playing with her several times, doing four-hand music at 1 piano and at 2 pianos. Schubert Trout, 4th movement was great fun. Probably one of the biggest challenges I've had in recent years is playing the Brahms variations on a theme by Haydn. She made me a better pianist, and she got me to play a technically challenging piece that I probably never could have played without her there to kind of hold me up emotionally as much as physically. And third, she was an awesome friend. We're all better human beings for having known her. My father passed away a few years ago. He had dementia. He was in decline with severe dementia for many, many years. And by the time he left this world, he wasn't exactly the man that I knew as my father. He was sort of gone long before that. One of the challenges we've had with Sue is Sue was Sue right to the end. She was the Sue that we all knew and loved right to the end. And lastly, I just want to give a thanks to Jim for getting us all together. I think it's important to us all as human beings to gather together at a time like this and to talk about how we feel. And Jim, you did a really awesome job of putting into the words the love that so many of us feel for Sue. Thank you.
I want to thank you also, Jim, and I'm so thrilled to meet this family. I've heard about you guys for a while. I play flute and I try to play piano. Sue was my piano mentor. I'm not sure it would have worked for her to be my piano teacher, given that I was there and she was here. But on flute, I was a little closer, and we performed sometimes and we played a lot, just the two of us. One of the times we performed, this will kind of give you an idea of what she's like as an accompanist for someone who's not at her level. So we played a piece that, it was fairly long for the Recreative Arts Club. I no longer exist, but it was a group of 30 or 40 people. I was pretty scared, but we played this thing, and I was really proud because we finished together. It started together. And I thought we'd done really well. And I said, Sue, thank you so much. I didn't know her so well then. I said, I thought we did really pretty well. And she said, Marie, it was a disaster. But that was just our levels speaking to each other briefly. But her kindness for people who weren't able to kind of keep up with her musically, but who kind of needed her encouragement, was just It was incredible and constant, and I'm just really glad to be able to tell you folks how wonderful she was to me. I'll miss her forever, as I'm sure we all will.
Don't be bashful. Okay, here comes someone. There's no short path from there to here. By the way, those of you who don't know Ruth Costa, there's a picture of Sue and Ruth together up on the collage.
I'm Tim Black. I play cello, and I had a opportunity to play for Sunday Classics East, and I prepared with Olivia Hope, and many long months, and she had been indisposed, and Andy O'Brien hopped in and said, well, "Yeah, Tim, let's do this," you know. And well, the day after we had had our rehearsal for that weekend, upcoming weekend, he had fallen and sprained his wrist, and he couldn't play. And I had no idea what was going on. I just practiced every day. I showed up 45 minutes early, and Sue busts through the door, "I'm your accompanist." I said, "Okay." You know, people had said they were trying to reach me, and it was just a total surprise. And I'm just, I feel really blessed at her eagerness, and we pulled off a really nice performance. That's my memory.
Sure, that's all of you? Okay, anyway, just to let you know, I'm going to be making the text of my eulogy as well as the complete text of all of my 22 Facebook postings about Susan available by email to anyone that wants them. So just write me at my email address and request it if you'd like that. Thank you all for coming. This has been very cathartic for me especially, but for most of us as well. Thank you.